Does clean the pineal gland though, whenever you put a ring over your head.
Oh, really? And so again, this is, crowns,
Yeah.
right?
If you
Crowns with a big gem.
yeah. If you look at even like Queen Elizabeth, the way she had her crowns and tiaras and all that, she had one something similar to this right here.
Mhm.
And when you think
Yes,
about it, it's
that's
got a lot of sacred
exactly.
geometry in there and that energy and everything.
That's literally the crown. Just put a
And
cross
even
on top
then,
of your
like
belt,
back in the Hindu days,
Yeah. Oh, you've got one. What is
yeah, and
that?
back in the Hindu days, they had the Vajras, which
They're
this is a
popping up
Vajra.
everywhere.
A Dejordi is what they're known as.
Okay.
Yeah, I have my own versions I make of these right here,
Wow.
and I make them in a tensor form, so they carry their own energy and they
What's that
produce
for?
energy as well. And
Looks like an energy
what they
weapon.
were they were yeah they produce 0 point energy, and you use them with, well, back in the day they would use it with meditation. You could even buy like the mala beads with 108 beads, and if you actually do the math, whenever you do the 4 times you're praying that's 432 right there. So those
Ah,
numbers always come
yes.
into play whenever you're thinking about it.
No.
And yeah, it's pretty interesting whenever you do the math and like sort of see those little correlations. But they do produce an energy, and like whenever it's like this, it sort of doesn't make it passive, but it just makes it forward energy. And you're sort of like, when you meditate with it, you learn how to use these tools a little more, and they produce a vital energy, and they sort of point energy and direct energy, as opposed to just like making that column. And the way the harmonizers work with this, making that donut of energy and everything.
Okay, so
It's kind of like the difference
So
between the AccuVac coil, which is this one here, and this produces like a laser light type beam of energy, whereas something like this one here is a toroid coil.
yeah.
yeah,
And so this is again creating the torus field rather than a beam of
that's
energy that is
so
like a precision laser.
hello and welcome. My name's Campbell. This is Autodidactic Channel. Thank you for joining me. And I have two special guests tonight. We have Cameron and Phil, and we are going to delve into the world of orgonite, energy, tensor coils, copper, affecting our own biofield, I guess, and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I shall let them explain. So welcome, Cameron. Welcome, Phil. How you going, guys?
Doing well,
Thank you for
mate.
having
Good to
us.
hear from you. The Yeah, the topic is tensor fields and tensor rings, all the different types of light life tools that come forth from a gentleman by the name of Slim Sperling, another researcher that sadly passed away. I think it was about in 2006. So more on this side of our timeline, as opposed to like Wilhelm Reich, who was way back in World War II and through into the early 60s.
Yeah.
But his story basically starts with him doing geopathic stress removal, taking dowsing rods, lengths of copper, and basically walking through and trying to find subtle energetic grids called Hartmann lines that are generated through all of our different types of technology that basically zigzag in non-natural forms. And so he's using these dowsing rods and basically going and finding where these lines are, and then using the rods and stapling them into the ground across that energy line, and it basically created a wall of light. And so any of that energy that was flowing through that line would hit that staple in effect and go up and over whatever it was that was in the way, whether it be your house, hospital, or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Had very interesting little bits and pieces where like it was a observation period where he was seeing a highway, basically, car accidents on this one particular bend all the time, in which, cars would just go off the road randomly. And so he did his dowsing technique there and basically then stapled these rods across the road and created this wall of energy. And from that point forward, there was no more car crashes in that stretch of road anymore. So that's sort of how he got started.
Wow.
And basically, yeah, was just
So
using the dowsing rods to create the wall of energy.
literally putting the physical dowsing rods across or under the road, and that's creating the wall, the energy wall. Is that right?
Yeah. So, if you think of them as staples like this, and yeah, he was basically just taking it and finding the edge of the Hartmann grid line and was then just stapling it so that it was going across and the line was then going through it.
Okay.
And so what it was doing is, as that line, the energy was hitting the staple, it was just creating a barrier where it was bouncing up and over a period of 100 meters, 200 meters, wherever you would then go put the next lot of staples down. And so, like, he was doing this sort of stuff on different construction zone sites and stuff like this as well, where he would have footwork foremans and stuff like this complaining about noise headaches and all this kind of stuff as well. And so he'd be employed as a geopathic stress removal person in different businesses and different corporations and stuff like this to go basically remove these subtle energies that were causing havoc within particular areas just by doing these dowsing techniques in order to find out where they were in order to abate them. But that then sort of evolved into further discussion in regards to particular qubit lengths. He was given different measurements from like the King's Chamber and in Giza, and was basically taking these lengths of wire and just hooping them into a coil, just a circular coop, and then would braid it so that it was a circular flow of energy. And the reasoning for that was that with these particular measurements, very, very specific measurements down to hundredths of a millimeter using a digital vernier caliper. But when you have these lengths of wire, and keeping in mind the dowsing rods that he was using were also based on these sacred qubit measurements, they would then start to create a feedback loop in the center of the ring based on the harmonic that was generated by the length of the wire itself. And so these circular rings, the very first ones that he had, were just one piece of wire in a hoop at these particular measurements. And what he found was that it was creating a vortices of energy on either side, but it was polarized. It had a positive and a negative side. Oh, okay. And so being unable to douse or feel most subtle energies, most people can't feel which is positive, which is negative. So he didn't want to put out something that could be harmful. This then evolved into where he would then take a twist of copper and actually twist it upon itself. And so you end up with that'll focus, but you end up with a twisted bit of copper like this, which is then formed into the ring. And so by having the two bits of wire twisted upon itself and then come back in a circuit like that, it's actually creating a counter-rotating vortex on either side of the ring. And so it's actually beneficial on both sides of the ring.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah, right. So both sides, positive and negative. It's like a monopole almost.
It's more that it's like a 0 point where the energy is being pulled in from both sides and then is flipping. So it's taking the energy and actually just flipping the energy through both sides. So if you think of it like a torus field,
I was going to say it's creating a torus. Yeah,
it's like a column of energy. Yeah.
And more specifically with the rings themselves, they're actually creating a pure white column of light throughout either side of the ring. And so anything that falls within that particular light column is being structured to its highest quality. Wow. It will basically turn water into its highest spin rate. And so if you take water, 2 cups of water, and put a tensor ring around one of them, but put them on a scale, right, 2 separate scales, the same water over a 48-hour period will actually then start to vibrate higher. And as such, the molecules that are in it will actually produce ormus. And so it'll actually get lighter, and it's visibly noticeable on the scale there.
Wow, just with a tensor coil. That is bizarre.
And you can always taste that flavor in the water when it's fully charged.
Oh, okay.
It's got a real nice flavor to it.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, you could literally just make a coaster out of a tensor coil and sit your water on it, or a glass jar with one sort of wrapped around it, right? And have a cup or a thing, and that's a way to sort of clear your water. That's an awesome tensor ring. That's Phil, talk. Give us some wisdom.
Thank you. Yeah, with different frequencies, they vibrate at different rates and they have different energies. I rediscovered quite a few qubits, and this one right here, I believe, is the central sun qubit. It's based on some measurements. Yeah, the mouthpiece. those are very handy right there too. With all these mask wearing and all that, it helps protect the air, and the copper actually has a antimicrobial and antiviral thing about it, and it just cleanses everything. It sort of grabs all the impurities and sort of clings it to the copper, so it'll clean the air for you. I've met a few people that told me they wear the face mask and they wear it all the time, and they never got sick once with any of those illnesses or whatnot. Not going to get into names or anything, but I'm sure everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, right. So that can, if you've been wearing one of those and then you put the copper one on, that can clear out any crap that you've got via the of your own crap that's supposed to be expelled, shall we say.
Yeah, it really has a cleansing and purifying energy to it, and it makes a whole new type of energy. And like, I've come up with little pieces like this one right here, and you wear it around your neck, and it's got neonatal magnets, so it'll go around to the thyroid glands and all these other parts of the body, and it flattens out the bloodstream with the neonatal magnets, so you have more surface layer, so you can get more oxygen to your blood, and thusly providing more energy and all that. And
see, I mean,
and I use the orgonite pucks on this one.
Oh yeah.
And I used a special measurement I had recreated on this one.
Oh man, they look like just really cool headphones.
And I sort of discovered this straight line measurement that you can make out of what, as Cameron was saying, Slim Sperling was the original creator, and he made a ring called a Venus ring, and it was basically taking the loop whenever you twist the wire and you cut it to a sacred measurement, and it would provide energy, and this provides a really phenomenal boost of energy. Later on, give me your ring size. I'll see if I can't ship you a ring as a gift.
Oh.
And well, what I did was I integrated what he did there, and I put it into his whole straight line measurement, and it sort of feeds back into a loop constantly, and it's making this accelerated pop of energy, and it's really phenomenal. It's been a really neat one. It's a treat making it, because you sort of want to have it all flawless and everything, and that's sort of the challenge, is always making it look real pretty for the eye.
And so these are all based on ancient measurement, like systems of measurements, qubits and things.
Yes.
Wow. So I mean, because we find that in all the old, buildings and the pyramids. So it's it's a sacred kind of measurement, isn't it? That's really interesting. And the other thing is, which and I've been contemplating this for years, jewelry, kings with their crowns and their jewelry, right, and their anklets and their bracelets. And do you think that's where this all came from?
What does this remind you of?
Oh, there you go. That's one step up from the tinfoil hat, man. That's like a Tensor hat. Exactly right. That's a crown.
Yeah, but it doesn't protect you though.
This one is actually I've designed as a lid for a fruit bowl. So any fruit that's sitting inside of it will end up lasting for a longer period of time, and it'll be revitalized with its highest potential because of all the hydrogen and the water that's inside of it that will end up getting structured as well.
Okay.
And so the thing with these as well is that they also help prevent mold growth. So anywhere that one of these is, you can basically focus stuff like this around the area, in particular things like the harmonizers, which I'll show you in a minute. But the idea with those is that they're actually radiating a torus field out rather than just being like a column of light coming out of the center of the ring, due to the configuration of how it's actually built. And the same with the face mask sort of thing. The idea being here is that, again, you just wear it over your mouth, and it's it's ionizing the air, basically. It's cleansing the air as you're breathing.
Okay, so because a lot of people are getting these like machines, and they're breathing like pure oxygen and ionized stuff and everything. So this is a tech version of that, right? A more simplistic kind of version of that.
That's the deceptive sort of thing about these rings, is that they're very, very simple. That there's not a whole lot that's actually involved with them. It's about the geometry. So they're pulling in a like an infinite amount of current. Right? They're superconductors, but there's no voltage, so it's not electrical.
Yes.
So it's got infinite potential, but it's drawing that in from the background of
Ether.
whatever you want to call it, space. But it's the higher realms basically. And the idea with these different frequencies, because there's a whole range of them, and they all exhibit different frequencies depending upon what length that they're actually cut to. Because again, the different measurement is what then reflects in the geometry. Slim Sperling initially was the one that came up with the 144 megahertz, which is known as the sacred or royal qubit. And this is a harmonic of the speed of light and the hydrogen model as well. It's different fractions of the base mathematics that is the speed of light and the hydrogen atom.
And the 144,000.
Then I believe it was Bill Reed that was working with him in regards to how they could then configure that particular frequency into like a generator, and that's where he ended up coming up with stuff like this here.
Wow.
And so this is a mini version of the design that he had previously, and this is basically 8 tensor rings with an AccuVac coil, which is the thing here in the middle. And so this here is like a light beam of energy, much like a laser pointer, whereas the rings act in a
Field,
horizontal plane, and exudes in that
Toroidal.
between the two.
Wow. So has anyone done any Krillian photography on these? Like, can you see the light coming out of them?
That's actually what I want to be making, is a Krillian photography screen to take observations of the different qubits, because a lot of what I've been doing since I had gotten an injury a while back, that's what led me to the tensor technology and orgonite, was getting healed and all that. And I've been making orgonite and tensor ring sense and all that, and it's been my mission to learn more and more about it. And I found out how to make Krillian photography screens and all that, so I can observe the different energies they all have, because as Cameron said earlier, they do contain different energies. And I love a lot of research and all that, so I've been lucky enough to find about a good 40 individual qubits of my own that I've come across over time, and they all carry a very nice harmonious energy, and it's very unique with each one. Like, some are more beneficial for water or removing EMF, and some work with chakras, different planes of chakras and all that, and they just provide so much energy. It's really a nice blessing to have it around, and it cleans out the energy from the house to the family, the pets, and everything all together. Yeah. It's really, really neat.
So, I mean, wow. So these sacred measurements, these qubits, what it sounds like is their frequencies. So if you think of like a xylophone, it's got different lengths of wood,
yes,
which are all different. Is that what we're sort of talking? So this is intricately tied to frequency and music and harmonics and all that kind of stuff. Wow.
Yeah, they all vibrate at a different frequency or different rate. Some vibrate a lot faster, some don't vibrate as fast, some sort of have a different harmonic pitch, I guess you could say. And whenever you're using your oscilloscope and all that to hone in on the frequencies, you'll notice that they actually do strike different notes. Like, some will be in a C flat or A sharp, A minor, and everything, and they carry different notes of the frequencies that vibrate, like sort of like the solfeggio frequencies and whatnot. And so there's some measurements that are based on those, and like Tesla's numbers 369 and 963 and all that, and the divine numbers and all.
And so you can tune these, right? Like, do you tune them once they're made? I mean, obviously, if you want to create a whatever, right, 528 hertz, you need a certain length of copper. Can you then check if that's the right frequency? Is that what the oscilloscope's for?
If you're very sensitive to energy, you can actually put I don't have an example. I don't know if Cameron has an example, but you can put beads on a tensor ring, and when you have 3 beads and you're very energy sensitive, you can adjust the beads accordingly to change the frequency of the actual tensor ring. The one that I believe that Slim Sperling used was Lost Qubit to do this. Wow. And he used the beads in reference to Nikola Tesla using them as capacitors or amplifiers for energy and all that. So whenever you would move the beads accordingly, it would move the energy accordingly to the different frequency.
Yeah,
Just
like
to clarify for you there, Campbell, as well, the individual frequencies are determined by the length that they're cut to. And so in order to get to these particular measurements, the very, very specific, down to the 100th of a millimeter with the digital vernier caliper. And so it's during that initial construction process when you're cutting the wire and getting it honed into that very specific length. And again, what is it? 18.325, I believe, is like the quarter measure of the empowerment qubit. And so if it's 18.324, it's going to be, ever so slightly off and may not even, actually work.
Wow.
So yeah, it's done within the actual construction process itself.
And you're cutting down to the millimeter, basically.
To the 100th of a millimeter.
100th of a millimeter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Being exact is key.
So it is very technical because, there's a lot of this stuff around, especially at the moment. And as far as orgonite, I mean, you can go on Wish and buy orgonite, right? Which, clearly is going to be crap. So, I mean, because this is the thing, it kind of looks, everyone's like, oh, have you got orgonite? But no one really knows what it's doing or how it works. It's this kind of cool thing. But it is all based on proper science and tech, really, isn't it? It's a proper.
Yes.
It's one of those things that I liken it to the comment that you made about your chimes. Your what'd you call them?
Tuning forks.
The tuning forks. Thank you. Yeah. You can get a $20 set of tuning forks, and it might be good for tuning a guitar.
Yeah.
But then you've also got the $5,000 set, that are extremely high quality, made with incredibly high quality materials and honed in to a very high degree. And that's again the same sort of difference that we're talking about in regards to orgonite and tensor rings and stuff like that as well. Is that for those that have actually done a lot of research and a lot of honing in on the skill, then you're going to produce a much better, much more coherent sort of piece of work.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, with a bit more research, I mean, it's technology, right? You can then sort of prove that it does what it does, and this is the thing. And this is, I think that's where we are. A lot of this stuff that people used to think was, woo woo, what, you're wearing bloody copper, you're an idiot. It's now getting proven, and this is kind of what we've discovered through, looking at the history. Is that's what tech was. It wasn't this complex electrical circuitry kind of thing. It was a much more basic but nature-based kind of tech, wasn't it? It was like basically just mirroring what we see in nature and using the natural energies anyway, rather than trying to beat nature, right?
Yeah, actually work with it
rather than against
it.
The concept.
Oh wow, implosion, self-respect and self-reflection and all this sort of stuff. And then, but no, we shifted it to explosion, chemical reactions and like dynamite and stuff like this. It's like, I don't think we'll go that route anymore. That's destructive. Let's implode and have a form of like growth that takes place from that internal sort of retrospect.
Well, yeah, and that's what's going on at the moment, isn't it? Everyone's, there's all this talk about shadow work when you have to go inside and, all this stuff, because if it's explosion, all we're doing is giving away energy, right? It's just going out. If we're going within, we're drawing it back in and empowering ourselves, it's the whole Taurus kind of thing. So there we go, a bit of a side. So all this geometry we're looking at, how important is wow, it's got a crystal in it. Tell us about that. Then I was going to say, how important is the geometry? Because I can see flowers of life and all this kind of stuff. But tell us about that cool thing first. It looks like, do you know what it looks like?
Yeah, the geometry is very important.
Sorry. Do you remember that movie? Oh, what was it? It was underwater. And they found these aliens underwater, the deep or something. Do you remember that? They had these
the abyss
around underwater, and they look like that thing that you're holding, whatever that's called. But they were glowing with energy. And sorry.
Yeah, the harmonizer. Yeah.
Harmonizer.
I believe that movie was called The Abyss.
The
That was the one
Abyss.
with that big old watery
Yep.
tube-like
That's
type
the
of
one.
creature.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, the geometry is very crucial because it makes that toroidal effect. So it's making an infinite toroid of energy. And when it's doing that, it has to go through the crystal and it's sort of purifying the energy. So you're always having a cleanse of energy that's passing through it. And it really makes a huge difference on to how the energy is being emitted and everything, as far as even down to the Keylontic lotus and the seed of life and all these geometries. They produce an energy, and when made correctly, you can really push out that energy, and it exudes everywhere. And that's a crucial part of all this, is really gifting and being able to give back to Mother Nature so that it can help the earth and sort of clean the earth as well as help others too, and making other
Nice.
people peaceful and bringing peace to our world.
Definitely. I mean, and that I was just going to ask. So, what are the practical applications of all this tech?
Bringing environmental cleansing, being able to bring peace and harmony and everything. If you actually were to put earphones or even a little speaker up to the coil of the harmonizer, it would amplify the sound. So if you're playing frequencies, it can actually magnify that sound of the frequencies being put out.
Up to 15 miles.
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
There you go.
Wow, really?
So even just striking a wind chime or something like that,
or
conductivity
yeah.
of the harmonizer will then amplify that signal up to a 15-mile radius.
So you could literally use one of those in your meditations and put intention and maybe a tuning fork in, and you're going to be affecting your whole community. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
One of the things that Slim Smalling found with his initial sort of harmonizer builds was that when he was working with Bill Reed, he took a like a microphone, basically like a specific sort of target directed microphone, and directed it at a cloud that was raining above Bill Reed's workshop, I think it was, and basically took a recording of the audio of it, and then had that as like amplified it a couple of times, layered it a couple of times so that it actually had a nice, decent signal, and then played it as an audio track inside of his workshop there. And he had a dead rat that had managed to get itself into the furnace and was decaying, and so his whole workshop was smelling just horrid. But as soon as he started playing that ambient frequency track in the presence of that harmonizer, he said that the entire room shifted, and he could start smelling beautiful fresh air, like it had just rained inside.
Wow.
So it's an ambient cleanser in that it's helping to transmute all of the negative smog that Wilhelm Reich was talking about. It's transmuting that deadly orgone energy into a positive form of the same stuff. And then you can amplify that with different frequencies, depending on the rings that were used in the process of creating it, or then also programming it through an audio track or audio frequency of some kind as well.
That's very cool, isn't it? Like, I mean, you've come across obviously the work of Dr. Emoto, but that's the same kind of thing, right? Everything's frequency. And once you change that frequency, you change the reality, right? Like the shape of everything. So like geometry is obviously very important. And I can see in your background there, Cameron, you've got a taller pyramid. And we see a lot of pyramids, right? With the orgone, and they're most of the time they're like the Giza pyramids, but that one's a taller one. And the reason I ask is we have Nubian pyramids are all tall, but also that the Russians did a lot of experiments with pyramids and pyramid angles, and they found that just by changing the angles, they were getting different results within the pyramid. So they were doing things like putting water in a freezing pyramid and it wouldn't freeze, and food wouldn't go off, and all this kind of stuff. So how important are the angles on the pyramids, and do different shapes create different things, different energies?
Absolutely. So the Prussian or the Nubian style pyramid is typically 76 degrees on the angle. And if you take a quarter measure of the sacred cubit and a half measure of the sacred cubit, it then provides a 76-degree angle, hence the Prussian style pyramid, as opposed to having two of the same sized measurements, which was the Giza. So taking four of the quarter based measurements of the same length and then turning that into a pyramid, it creates that equilateral style pyramid. And so each of those style pyramids do have a different resonant frequency depending on the angles that they're created. For example, the Russian Nubian style one, the 76-degree, works primarily upon the crown chakra and the third eye, whereas the Giza pyramid works primarily on the heart chakra and the
solar plexus,
sacral.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting because a lot of people say that, you know, Egypt's the heart of the world, right? It's supposed to be in that sort of middle bit. That's interesting.
I'll just point out, like, there's different elements that are associated with the geometry within each of the different rings as well. So, like, for example, the 144 megahertz, which was the sacred cubit, that primarily focuses upon the physical aspects of the body. And so, you know, designed as like rings and bracelets and stuff like that, so that it helps with the physical aspects of pain and stuff like this. Whereas another lady by the name of Maria Alves Soprano, who's a psychic healer of sorts. I don't specifically know what she does, but she's channeled this information in
as well. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. But yeah, she brought in the Ramu cubit after having a friend of hers supply the Viking cubit length after, you know, finding it in a whole bunch of different Norse, Viking books as a repeating sort of measurement. And so they decided, all right, well, let's dowse it, see if it'll work as a tensor field, and then form it into a ring. And it worked. And so she actually brought through two different measurements, one known as the Viking cubit, which is sacred feminine-based energy, water-based energy, and then the Ramu cubit, which is fire-based, masculine-based energy. And so having those couple of different rings, like, for example, the water-based ones and the fire-based ones, we took a bunch of rings and did a fire-based test with candles. And so just took a bunch of different little tea candles, sat them out in a row, had 6 of them as a control, and then 3 of them we put fire-based rings over, and the other 3 we put the water-based rings over. And so the water-based ones ended up going for about 20-25 minutes or something like that. The controls ended up going for close to 50 minutes, and then the fire-based ones nearly doubled.
Wow.
And so depending on the element, it can either have a benefit or a negative type effect, depending on what kind of interaction you're having with it as well. So, an example of how you could use that would be the food preservers that I have, little nodes that I create. I base them with the 144 hertz and the water-based Viking cubit ring as well, so that it's working in conjunction with the water that's in the food, as opposed to something like the engine energizers that I make, which is trying to get better combustion out of an engine. And so fire-based energy, the Ramu cubit, would be better off for something like that.
Yeah, where that would make the fruit go off quicker, the fire, wouldn't it? Obviously, because it's going to put more energy into it. Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah.
Triskelions are good for that water energy too.
Oh, nice.
I love the triskelion.
I actually do have one of those.
Yeah, you could put your glass of water on top of it, or you could put intentions in it, and you could sort of program it to do whatever you sort of like with it. A single twist wire is more of a masculine energy, and a double twist is more of a feminine energy. But as well, whenever you make a double twist, it makes that tensor field. So you're making like these 3 type of columns of energy that provide that nonstop energy as well as
all right.
The way the other tensor fields work and everything. And
sitting my water on that, my water cup or bottle.
Yeah, you could just sort of put your water on top of there, and it'll sort of change the spin rate and everything, and it'll give it that warmness and that charge, and makes it more beneficial, and it takes a lot of the bad minerals out. I mean, it's not going to exactly strip it of fluoride or anything like that, but it'll definitely give it a charge and a boost, and it'll make it more beneficial for the body to absorb. And
what it does,
just crucial for
what it does in regards to chlorine, fluoride, and all that, though, is that it does have an effect by trying to strip the positive charge.
Okay.
So it won't absorb into the body as much. You generally sort of pee it.
Yeah, right. Cool. So
it does clean the pineal gland, though, whenever you put a ring over your head.
Oh, really? And so again, this is crowns.
Yeah.
Right?
If you
crowns with the big gem.
Yeah. If you look at even like Queen Elizabeth, the way she had her crowns and tiaras and all that, she had one something similar to this right here.
Mhm.
And when you think
Yes,
about it, it's
that's
got a lot of sacred
exactly.
geometry in there and that energy and everything. And
That's literally the crown. Just put a
and
cross
even
on
then,
the
like
belt,
back
huh?
in the Hindu days,
Yeah. Oh, you've got one. What is
yeah, and
that?
back in the Hindu days, they had the Vajras, which
They're
this is a
popping up
Vajra.
everywhere.
A Dejori is what they're known as.
Okay.
Yeah, I have my own versions I make of these right here,
Wow.
and I make them in a tensor form, so they carry their own energy and they
What's that
produce
for?
energy as well. And
Looks like an energy
what they
weapon.
were they were yeah, they produce 0 point energy, and you use them with, well, back in the day they would use it with meditation. You could even buy like the mala beads with 108 beads, and if you actually do the math, whenever you do the 4 times you're praying, that's 432 right there. So those
Ah,
numbers always come
yes.
into play whenever you're thinking about it.
No.
And yeah, it's pretty interesting whenever you do the math and like sort of see those little correlations. But they do produce an energy, and like whenever it's like this, it sort of doesn't make it passive, but it just makes it forward energy. And you're sort of like, when you meditate with it, you learn how to use these tools a little more, and they produce a vital energy, and they sort of point energy and direct energy, as opposed to just like making that column. And the way the harmonizers work with this, making that donut of energy and everything.
Okay, so
It's kind of like the difference
So
between the AccuVac coil, which is this one here, and this produces like a laser light type beam of energy, whereas something like this one here is a toroid coil.
yeah,
yeah,
And so this is again creating the torus field rather than a beam of
that's
energy that is
so
like a precision laser.
yeah, so that's a vertical horizontal as well. So one's more, I
Mm.
guess, more to focus your intention, and the other's more to put intention out. Would that be correct?
yeah.
Hey, yep.
Nice. Wow. So with healing, I mean, clearly, obviously, all these tools are going to be good for mental well-being, for cleaning up your water, and probably, just by the way, probably a cheaper option of cleaning your water as well, right? Some of these water machines are just ridiculous. So with healing, like, yeah, what's their value as far as is anyone using these as healing tools, as far as the directed energy kind of bits and pieces? Has that been tested?
The primary sort of uses that I've seen it have been used as at the minute are more so passive, in that they're helping people, keep their food for longer, they're treating their water, and therefore they're treating themselves. So
Yeah,
it's more of a passive type effect in that regard. But
no.
then the specific tools, such as the ones that Philip and I have just shown, they're used more like a Reiki practitioner's type tool.
Yeah, cool.
And so it's assisting the healers themselves in order to be able to then heal others in those type practices.
Yeah, they're acting as amplifiers, pretty much.
Amplifiers, yeah. Yeah, and directional tools as well. So again, something like this that has the tensor tools inside of it can be used to direct particular energy and actually get in on particular points,
Did you make that?
like you would in acupuncture or something like that. Yeah, this is an order that's going to be sent to the US soon.
Very
Wow.
nicely
So,
done.
because I can see one up on the wall behind you there too, Philip. The Ankh. The Ankh. What do we think the Ankh was?
Yeah.
I was sort of theorizing, and I've been
Um,
talking about tuning forks, and I thought maybe it's some kind of frequency tuning thing, and now you're showing them.
a
So,
couple of
what
those.
do we think these things are? Word.
The Ankh represented both the masculine and the feminine as well. It did make energy. I mean, you had the column, which had the, what is it? I can't think of the name right off the back of my hand right now. Sort of lost the name, but
The
it's
Jed.
got the de Jorde
Jed.
column, which represented the spinal cord and everything.
Yeah. The
Oh,
Jed
And
pillar.
Caduceus.
Jed pillar.
there you go. Yeah, the Jet period. Yes, and with that being said, it made energy in that column, and that column was part of the whole piece of it, which actually was part of the masculine, and the ring on top was part of the feminine, with the ring up here being very, woman-like, and the
Pisces.
side pieces were supposed to be part of the ovaries and all that for the reproductive organs and everything. And it had multi meanings, but I mean, all in all, it just really produced a lot of energy. And I think we just need to learn how to use a lot of these tools in a proper way to be able to heal a lot more with them. Like, for example, this one here, I'll lay on people during a Reiki session and I'll put it over like their heart chakra, and I'll use a pendulum, and I do a lot of Reiki different ways. But the way Slim Sperling did it was he would have a little harmonizer and he would spin it, and as long as it would keep spinning, someone needed to be healed, and as soon as it would stop spinning, that's when the healing process is over. It would correct all the chakras just by spinning it over the person. And sometimes it could take 5 minutes, other times it could take 20 minutes or an hour, but as long as it would take, it would just cure and heal it and align the person.
Wow. So you're a Reiki practitioner as well, then, Phil?
Yes, I've been a practitioner for about 4 years already.
Awesome. So yeah, if anyone wants any healing, and I mean, this is the thing. This is kind of, I mean, it's not new tech. It's kind of rediscovered tech, I guess. But it's like you said, you don't know exactly what it all does. You're still sort of going through the figuring it out. And I guess, are you letting the tech tell you what to do with it? Is that sort of what's happening here?
Well, with some pieces like the AccuVac, as Cameron was pointing out, that actually was a Reiki healing device. This piece in the middle, it was made with a single wire, so it was given polarity like this. And the way Cameron has it, it sort of makes a bigger column of energy in a different manner. But one side is a negative and one side the positive. So when you would spin it, you would sort of vacuum suck out the energy of negative, and then you turn it around the other way, and you'd spin it again, and you replace it with positive energy, so that you're not just pulling something out and making someone feel sort of ill. You're replacing with that positive energy so that they feel replenished and not just like taken away from their energy and all.
Wow. And I mean,
So they have a lot of crucial roles the way they're used.
I have to make the comment, the ends of those do look kind of pine coney. The pine cones.
Yeah, actually, I have some pine cones too.
And so,
for the third eye.
Do you think that's all connected with this? The Sumerian pine cones?
Yeah. It does open the third eye and everything. So.
Wow. And
so, yeah, whenever you sort of spin it around someone like that and everything, you
will what, heal them? Do you think?
Here's the bottom of that one right there.
See a lot, don't we? And
yeah.
Ed
These are all healing pieces.
Ed Leeds-Scallon was also apparently he was using cones, right, to levitate rocks, and his rocks for Coral Castle. So this
yes,
it's very interesting, isn't it, that we're at this time where everything's falling apart. We're all looking for new solutions and that, and all this stuff is suddenly sort of popping out, and we're starting to get a grasp around this old ancient sort of tech that clearly works, right? Because this is stuff that we can find in all the books, these shapes, this geometry. We've got all this information that it works, all the Rife stuff, right? Dr. Emoto, all this field energy stuff, and they still just want us to go in and cut our bits off, right? Which is clearly not what's working, because what's happening, I think, is people are starting. Well, some people are starting to realize you've got to go back to the drawing board, right, and fix the blueprint, because everything comes from that. And that's sort of what this is more like preventative, isn't it? More preventative, so you can eat better food, drink better water, live in better energy, sort of get rid of any negatives that are hanging around in that, rather than, I've got a problem, I'll zap myself kind of thing. It's more, working with subtle energies.
Yeah, like you said, it's preventative. It basically gets you in a period or a place where your body is already in a state of healing, where it's basically healed itself. It's just infusing pure white light energy into whatever particular thing it's interacting with, whether it's food, animals, plant life, us, doesn't really matter. Like the ring that you've got, for example, the armbands that I sent.
Yes.
You could take that, and basically, if you've got a sore shoulder or something like that, just put that directly over the period of the area that is being affected in pain, and then like 15-20 minutes, it should be giving you a bit of relief there.
Yeah, they're very therapeutic.
The 144 megahertz ring, the sacred qubit, being physically primarily based in the physical aspects of the body. It's known for basically helping with physical aches, pains, this kind of stuff. And so, given that the ring has a pure white light of column on either side of it, you just by placing it directly over the affected area will then infuse that area with pure white light and therefore help with the regeneration process of the body basically just healing itself. And so it can be used as a countermeasure to harm that's already happened to you. But just by wearing this type of stuff every day, the body is no longer being exposed to massive amounts of EMF radiation. It's in fact being infused with pure light force energy, which offsets any of the negative, BS that's around you in the period that you're out and about, from the cell phone towers, etc.
So with those rings, the tensor rings, you can wear those. Could you wear those as bracelets, and they would sort of affect you? Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Or a triple bracelet. Rings.
So this is three of them that have been put together as a double twist. So it's a bit more powerful. But these are done in what's known as a straight line tensor. And so, they're not actually joined together.
Okay.
It's just brazed on the end. And because when you do a double twist like that, it's much harder to get the two ends of the wires to actually meet up. And so typically I don't bother to actually try and put them into a ring, because unless all four of those wires are then in the correct order, it's going to be a discordant sort of energy exchange.
Yeah, the circuit won't be there.
So I don't typically do the double twist unless it's in a straight line qubit.
Cool.
It's a little more of a technical weld whenever you're making but yeah, also the Genesis crystals work very well as a tensor field generators. They work very well as a bracelet too, and they sort of collapse on themselves.
Oh, wow.
And you wear it as a bracelet, or you could put your drink around there. And this one, little
faucets,
smaller, but it still fits and everything. And with these, what I've been told is whenever you have it on a triangle base, that's for healing, and when you have it on a square base, that's for manifesting.
Oh.
So these are also manifesting tools as well as healing tools and everything.
That's
for the other practicing types.
So with things like that we'll talk about with the lateral fields, are they the things that you would use for manifesting, as far as putting intention in and then sending it out into the field literally and turning that into a magnet? Is that what we're talking about here?
It would sort of amplify, like whenever you're putting your intention in there, anything you put in there, it amplifies, whether I guess it wouldn't really work with negative, because it sort of polarizes that and turns it to a positive thing, so you can't really do the bad with it. Thank goodness for that. But in that same sense, you could really just put any intention of positive things, like hey, my cousin's sick, I need them healed, and you put a picture of it over, on top of the picture, you place the Genesis crystal, and it sort of sends that healing energy and sort of more intention towards healing in a good vibe like manner.
And to my mind, you would be speaking to the field, like you're putting intention to the energy field, right? Because it's energy to energy. It's not this. You cut out the physical bit, right? Because people always get the physical world sort of mixed up, and it's like, I want to be healthy, so I need a doctor, or I need this pill, or it's where this is sort of just putting an intention out. This is what I want, or this is what I am, and waiting for the energy to come back, right?
Yeah, this increases the life energy field, the life force, if you will, and thusly, when you're doing that, you're making your healing process come so much quicker, and it sort of neutralizes that whole, I guess, staying sick transitioning period, the healing and all.
Just to further your point there as well, Phil, in regards to the negative intentions, Slim Sperling was approached by the military in regards to this type of technology, and they basically just said, well, we can't do anything with this, because it seemingly has an inbuilt sort of safety mechanism in which the twisting of the copper, if you twist it, you got to twist it in a clockwise rotation.
Yeah.
And if you twist it in order to get the two positive fields, and if you twist it in a negative, you twist it the other way, in a counterclockwise rotation, it won't actually produce two negative fields, but it'll just stop. It doesn't produce a field at all. So it seems to have some kind of like inbuilt mechanism by which you cannot actually use these tools for negative intentions. It doesn't allow for it to go through unless it's being used for the higher, the highest benefit of the individual, or
Well, man, that makes sense to me because energy's creative. Energy doesn't destroy it. It can't create nothing, so it can just create. So yeah, you literally couldn't have a frequency that there's a destruction frequency. I don't think you could have that. But interesting that the military, right? I mean, a bit of proof there. If the military is sniffing around, there's something going on.
He actually had to get a military grade oscilloscope to hone in on the frequencies, so that back then the technology wasn't pristine where they could have it now, like where you could just buy these things at the store or online and all that. So he went to the military for that as well, so he could hone in on the frequencies when he was doing all the original work and laying out the original sort of groundwork for everything that is being done now.
Wow. I just see this stuff coming up everywhere at the moment. It's like, everyone's asking for answers, right, that aren't mainstream, shall we say. And we do have all these answers coming up everywhere, and it all seems to be frequency based, right? It's just showing us everything is energy, and that's what we need to work with. It's like if someone has disease in their arm and you cut their arm off, it doesn't mean you're going to stop the disease. That often happens, and then the disease is somewhere else because it's in their blueprint, right? That's all their body can produce because their blueprint's disease. So we need to go back to basics, get our basic energy signature sorted, and then everything comes from that, right? That's what produces our body. Because I was talking to someone the other day, and it's our bodies don't have auras, or our bodies don't have spirits. Our spirits have bodies. So everything starts as energy and then condenses down into the physical. So everything is a result. Everything physical is a result of the energy. Yeah.
Clairvoyance and people that do Reiki and have the ability to actually see these particular type, these light bodies, if you will, notice different like blockages and things like this. They're actually able to visualize them, and therefore start working with these tools in order to then come through and unblock them. But as you're saying, everything starts in these forms of energy. If we think of ourselves as a Russian doll, our physical dense body, this is the meat suit that we inhabit, that soul spirit inhabits. But then there's the couple of different light bodies, our thinking minds and all this sort of stuff that are completely ephemeral, like it's electricity. And so it all starts out here and then comes and condenses. Once it hits the body, well, that trauma, you've been pushing it off for a long period of time, enough for it to then to start manifesting in the body, because the body is the last place it manifests. So
exactly. I heard that they can take photos with Carillion photography now, and 6 months prior to something showing up in the physical, they'll see it in your energy body. Like 6 months.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the test where they show when you cut the leaf in half and then you just have that whole leaf still coming out in there.
Oh, is this a photo of a leaf that's been cut and the bioenergy signature is still visible under
you can still see the bioenergy signature whenever you have on the Carillion plate.
Good point.
I was going to say, like, there's another example of that where somebody has lost their arm, and same thing, like it's that ghost feeling where they still have all of the nerves and everything that are firing, but yet they haven't, they actually haven't physically got an arm anymore.
Exactly.
But what they're feeling is the energy signature.
Yeah, people can get their arm cut off and then have an itchy arm that isn't there. So I mean, that's pretty much proof, right?
That would be annoying.
It's like, how do I scratch that? Bloody hell! Knew I should have kept that. All right. So, for anyone who wants to find you guys and get some more information on all this kind of stuff, where do they find you? Give yourselves a shout out.
You go first, Phil.
You can always find me on Instagram or Telegram or Facebook. You can just look up my name or Organized South Texas. That's my Instagram handle there. I sort of been trying to work down here in Lower South Texas to sort of bring back all the life force energy that's been sort of polluted and everything with all the waste. Because I don't know if y'all are really aware, but we get that rocket testing done down here in South Texas and all that from Elon Musk. So we're trying to do a lot more cleaning for that. And that's what I've been trying to do, is getting more to that area so that it can sort of mitigate against all that fuel being burnt off and just exploding into the water and just leaching into our bodies and our systems like that. And just really not healthy. So those torus coils that you were showing, Maxwell, that's where I gift them everywhere.
And so Ohio, right? There's a bit of stuff going on up in the USA. Would this be good for cleansing all that kind of area? I mean, obviously there's
the copper is great for cleansing the energies. It's like the harmonizers, they really do a real good amount of cleaning. If you could have them gifted to certain areas, that way you could sort of grid and it goes out like a network from there, and it covers a larger radius. And the same thing with the orgonite. I mean, if you really just grid it everywhere, and if you know how to, like Cameron was saying, if you learn how to use the dowsing rods, you know where to place them on geopathic stresses so that it could sort of fix that. And both tensors and orgonite do that very well. And when you combine them, it sort of amplifies the energy, and one sort of is amplifying the other, and they sort of work hand in hand. It's like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, you know, you can't go wrong with having the two set up like that. It's just an abundance of energy. And so I use a lot of tensors in my work, just like Cameron does. I mean, you can't go wrong with just putting more energy in every piece just so you can heal the planet, you know, heal people for that matter too.
It's one of the most physioelectric things on the planet, these tensor rings. Like, I think it had a reading of over 13,000 when it was tested, which is like 4,000 or 5,000 over the next most conductive thing that's available.
Which basically means that they're constantly producing energy, frequency, right?
It's from the Canning structure that is the copper.
When it's being twisted, it's under that constant stress and pressure, so it's making that constant piezoelectric effect happen. And then the copper has its crystalline structure, so whenever you're sort of making them, you can sort of program intention in them just by talking to them, just sort of like Emoto says with water. Well, copper holds that same crystalline structure, so you can sort of program intention in it whenever you're making them, and you can manifest in that same technique, or like, you know, for better healing, or, you know, just, you know, in general, really.
On the harmonizers there, you were saying about clearing the Ohio, poisons and stuff. In the, I think it was 1996 period, Slim and Bill Reedy, they took, I think it was about 14 individual harmonizers that they had created and gifted them alongside the air clearing music track that he had made, and strategically gifted them to different areas throughout Denver, Colorado, which at the time was basically you couldn't see more than like 100 meters in front of you because of this brown smog. Just the air pollution was horrible. And so on a late evening one night, he's basically called all of the different people and told them, all right, this is a test, for the next hour, turn this audio frequency thing on next to your harmonizer, and we'll see if we can try and clear up the air. And by the next morning, there were reports all over Denver where they hadn't seen the sky as clear as it had ever been for years. So if we're able to get these particular devices out into strategic areas, like what Phil was saying on these different parts of geopathic stress lines, the Hartman grid, if we can grid particular parts of that grid, then that ambient sort of weather in the area will get better. The overall pollution in the area will get lessened, and overall it'll just be better for everybody that happens to be in that environment.
Yeah, even back in the 90s, Slim Sperling gifted little personal harmonizers to ambulance drivers and police officers, and the crime rate was reduced, and they saw that there was a improvement there by at least about 70%, I want to say, or somewhere around that number.
Wow.
Don't quote me on the exact number, but it was somewhere around there.
I think it was closer to 30, but like it was accumulative. So like every year it was getting better. Yeah.
You're right. So, I mean, this is...
Yeah, and as well, he had gifted a harmonizer to Galveston and another one to the Yucatan Peninsula to help the hurricanes that were coming through our areas and the areas of Texas and all that back in the day. So that's where I feel like we just need to sort of keep doing that and re-gift to keep that big energy coming up, because there's a lot of negative energy with these cell phone antennas and all this kind of stuff. And there's just a lot of bad processes that happen, and it's like just, you know, not good for the water, not good for the environment, nor the people. So the more we can do for that, the more we can do for ourselves fundamentally. And
no, and I agree. And everyone's going
it's a
on.
trigger effect. It keeps helping.
I mean, you hear so much about, you know, 5G and, you know, what are they called? Chemtrails and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, focusing on that is energy, right? That's just going to create that. Like I've said for a long time, we've already got all the answers. We've got them. We just need to start using them. So with things like this, people could literally they could form groups across an area. They could all get one of those, and at a certain time, they could all put intention in, and they could affect a huge area, like state. We could affect like all of Ohio kind of thing, with groups and with this technology, right? And maybe this is the way forward, how we go and clean up all this mess we've been left in.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, actually Nikola Tesla said it. If we could, how was it? If we could use metaphysical science as opposed to modern science, what they did in 100 years, we could do in less than 10.
Yeah.
And I believe that to be very much so. I mean, it's just getting the masses to see what can actually happen with this technology and what it could do for the potential. And
this is what they've done, haven't they?
It could really be a game changer.
They've got everyone believing that the ether doesn't exist. All their science, and this is why none of their science works. This is why they need 14 blackboards of equations to try and get you to believe something, because they take out the fifth element. There's no ether. So, and this is why people think this stuff is woo-woo, right? Because they've been raised to believe that, oh no, what do you mean? If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. You know, there's no energy field. And so when we start talking about it, people are like, what? But like you said, you go back to the great minds, they all talk about this. They all talk about ether. They all say it's the main energy. It's the one and be all and end all. And that's what's been taken away. And then look at the state of the world, right? I mean, it's kind of simple. We need to bring back this, you know, this connection with energy, which is who we are, right? The one, the all, the whatever you want to call it.
The thing that bemuses me about people that you know, they say this is all woo-woo type nonsense. You know, we can't see it. How do we see it? Well, okay, you've been trained to only think in terms of electricity and magnetism, but you can't see those things really, right, unless you accidentally touch a electrical voltage and have it zap your arm kind of thing. And I mean, they make use of EM waves all the time in regards to, well, cell phones and stuff like this, but again, we can't see these things. So, it must be magic. And it's like, hang on a minute. You can't see this thing, but we can measure it. It's one of the most superconductive materials on the planet and is capable of, being a infinite capacitor because of it. So I don't quite get the mindset. It's like, well, just because you can't see the thing doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
With some powered pieces, whenever you're using coils, because in some of my pieces I'll use a rodent coil. I don't know if you can really see it here.
Yeah.
But this is like a necklace pendant, and it has a tensor ring around it too. But whenever you plug them in, you can actually get a multimeter, and they even sell the wireless multimeters to check plug outlets and all that. As you're putting it close to it while it's running the frequencies, you'll see the light or hear them chirping off, because they are actually emitting that electromagnetic wave of energy or pulsing that frequency. And whenever you put coils in the orgonite, here's an example of one of the ones I'll be shipping out to some friends of mine. But whenever you add these to the orgonite, you can write frequencies and you could do a lot more healing, and it's a lot more intensive therapy with healing whenever you're doing that. And there's different types of coils you can use. This is known as a sucker punch. It's whenever you actually wrap the quartz crystal in a certain pattern and you twist the wire a certain way and everything, and it sort of makes this popping energy just explode, and it's good for clearing out a lot of stuff. I picked this wrap up from some friends that showed me early on in the groups and everything, and I put this one at the bottom of the pyramid, so whenever you have it sitting on Earth and you have the wires properly, tapped into for the energy, it'll heal the planet, sort of as another type of a piece, because everyone wants to heal from above, but I feel like the planet needs to be healed from below too. So that's where this coil comes in at the bottom, so it can do proper healing and everything.
When you say the sucker punch, you're referring to the Mobius coil. This here, is that right, Phil?
That's the monsoon coil that was made by Steve Getty. I have a couple of those. Yeah, the monsoon coils were made over there in Australia. A good friend, I have a couple smaller ones right here. But yeah, they produce a great amount of energy. They're just pretty much identical to the rodent coil and the sucker punches. They sort of just constantly working that PEMF, and they're constantly clearing out that energy, and it's just zapping all that energy when you're using that certain frequency. I think it's like a 15 megahertz Clark zapper that they use with them.
You can so plug whatever into them. They use a 15 hertz zapper to begin with, but because it's a positive negative terminal on the wire that's wrapped around the tensor ring, you can plug that into an audio channel. You can plug that into yourself. Wow. You can plug it into whatever you want.
What would happen if you plug it into your main? Would it do anything?
Yeah.
It would amplify the EMF that's being generated by the lines within the house. Anything that's connected to that circuit would then be attached to that. And so any of the like positive charged orgone that is being emitted by the house itself through those lines of energy that's being passed through the electrical wiring would then be nullified by that coil.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, even if you put a ring around the electrical meter on the side of your house or whatever, it sort of creates a column of energy over the meter box, and it's sort of taking the chaos out of the energy and sort of reformatting it to a normalized type of stable energy, so it's not so bad to your electricity isn't so bad in the house. I mean, it's good to have it in every room because there is a lot of devices we now use in our everyday lifestyle, from Bluetooth headsets to our cell phone just being plugged in. It generates a lot more negative energy than it would as if it's just sitting there on the table by itself. But whenever you put these over the meter box, it sort of changes that algorithm of the whole house and formats that energy into a more of a positive and coherent energy and everything.
Brings coherency to chaos.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what we need at the moment. And this is the thing, there's all these products coming out that's saying they're doing stuff like that, but they're all electronic devices, right? Which are going to be giving off more fields than radiation. It's like, how does that work?
Yeah.
It does depend. Like, for example, there's an orgone amplifier that somebody has made, which is a bunch of different coils inside of it kind of looks like a radio tuning station with antennas. And the format of this particular electronic box is actually an orgone generator in of itself, and is able to be custom dial tuned to particular frequencies depending on what you actually want. So it's something that you can then plug that into a bigger pyramid and stuff, and run those particular channels through the pyramid and have the amplification that way as well. Wow. Or just run it by itself. So, I mean, without a pyramid, or without another tensor ring or something like that, the device itself is actually putting out beneficial energy, and it's doing the same sort of thing as what an pyramid would do as well.
So this is literally going to turn into circuitry. Like that's a circuit, right? That's a free energy machine type thing. Oh wow, what's that?
I added a pyramid to this. In the Mexican culture, it's called a molcajete. It's basically a pestle and mortar. This would be the bowl for it.
Yeah.
But it's usually made of like a basalt rock. So I decided to use it to make an orgone piece, and I use this to charge like a cup of water, or I'll put like stones on there and sort of let them charge and everything. And
you've basically filled up
but it's like a charging
mortar, the mortar or the pestle, one of them. But you filled that up with orgone and crystals and copper and stuff, have you? And turned it into like that, yeah.
Yeah, all the metal layers, and I layered it, and I added a little pyramid in the middle there. I don't know if you can really see it very well, but
popping up.
Yeah, it came out really neat. It sort of has a focal point of energy coming out of there, and I even added mirrors to the sides and the bottom layer so that light energy can sort of be amplified. As they say, that mirrors sort of amplify it. So if you were to put a mirror at the bottom of a piece of orgonite, it would sort of enhance that energy that's traveling up and out of it to wherever else it needs to go to amplify that energy field.
Wow, that's very cool. And did you just grab something, Cameron? No, you're back. And so, Cameron,
there's also violet ray wands that were made by Nikola Tesla.
What are they?
And well, the violet ray wand, you can actually bubble out the energy of all your organite, and you sort of amplify the energy, and you're bringing this whole new life energy, and it's really, really neat. I don't have my wand with me, actually. I have it in another room, but maybe next time around I can fire it up and
yeah,
do some
yeah, we've got
demonstrations
to
and all
get
that.
into wands, man. Wands. Have you made wands like copper with crystal sort of wands? Like, I guess they're similar to those directional bits you had.
Yeah, I've made a
so
couple of versions.
It's, I mean, this stuff is just so, fairy tale, right? It's just, energy, it's wands, it's like these, sort of energy healing devices. It's just, which is everything that they want us to not believe, right? But I think that's where that's our true past, is all this stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, that's sort of what Hollywood was based on. Whenever you think of the holly plant, they used it for healing and all that, and the druidry and all those.
Well, they used the wood for wands,
so
didn't they? The Hollywood.
This one I cut to a sacred measurement, and I used. So with this one, I cut it to a sacred measurement, and I put an AccuVac on the front to do healing. And when you spin it, it sort of creates that healing force and everything, and you can sort of direct the energy with something like this, in that manner of speaking.
Wow. So and you can make your own, right? Custom kind of tools with all this kind of stuff. Wow. All right. So where do people find you, Cameron? Are you mainly on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm trying to set up a website, but I haven't quite gotten around to it yet. But at the moment, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and on Etsy. And
Etsy. Okay,
email me directly at Organite Creation Australia.
Cool. So you've got a store, and how about you, Philip? Do you selling as well? Do you sell all your stuff?
I'm not on Etsy, but I mean, you can basically find me on Telegram, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And they can contact
just look me up by name primarily, and I can always assist you there after that and everything.
We'll send some links so you can put them in the description below.
Yeah, exactly. I'll put all the links below. And just so you know, Cameron's in Australia and Philip's in the USA, so obviously sort of grab someone in your area, especially if you want to buy, avoid the postage. But yeah, and if you've got, any questions, I guess, send them an email. And if you want to learn more, I'm guessing there's groups and things that you guys talk to. Is there are there like communities where you're sort of all working this stuff out?
Yeah, there's Organite groups that are available through Facebook. If you just type in Organite or Tensor tool or anything along those search terms, you'll likely be able to find them.
Awesome.
I think there's one called Organite Oz. There's a Tensor Tools Australia as well.
Technology and
technology is one that's a worldwide group. Yeah,
Carlos Sosa makes a lot of the groups from Portugal, and he's a good guy. He really makes a lot of pages for everyone to socialize on and gather up, and so everyone can commute together as a assimilated mass, I guess, so we can all help each other and help others out like that in that way.
Just on that point, there's very few people in this space that I've found that are not just giving directly from the heart, being so forthright with information whenever you ask a question. So, I mean, if you want to get into this space to help us out and, help win this war, then by all means, give us an email, contact us, reach out. We'll point you in the right direction of how you can go about doing this. Because for the most part, it is very, very simple. All you need is a drill, a set of side cutters and a pliers, and a gas torch and some solder. It's really not that difficult to actually get into the space. It does take a little bit of practice and whatnot to get your measurements correct, absolutely correct with a vernier caliper though. So it's just like anything. You just got to practice at it, and you'll be able to help us along the way. And like I said, there's very few people in the space that are not very forthcoming with information. So don't feel hesitant to come and ask us any questions about specific measurements or anything like that. Just get into the space, give it a go, see how you like it, and see what you can come up with. Because the thing with like all of these different things, in particular things like the face masks, fruit bowls, all the different configurations, these are all just ideas that have been downloaded through ideas that come to different people. And so we've been sharing those tools and seeing who can come up with different ideas and different functions based on particular instances of need. So you might be able to come up with something that is entirely different, such as like a mandala, which you would hang in an outdoor space in order to help cleanse the environment around it and, you know, get rid of mold and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, see what you can come up with. Have fun with it.
Yes, awesome.
Beautiful work, brother.
Awesome. And of course, this is...
Thanks for the opportunity, Campbell.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here. Yeah. Thanks both of you for your time. And I think we'll definitely have to get you back. I don't know if you've heard about electro gardening, but I wouldn't mind having a bit of a chat about that and see what you know about that. And of course, to everyone watching, you know, this is where we are, right? We're all talking about how do we build the new Earth. This is how we do it. We start doing things that are you know, conducive to the new Earth, right? The new Earth doesn't need accountants. It needs healers, right? And people who are working with earth energy. So, you know, this you know, could be, you know, a hobby or it could be a business. So, you know, if you are interested, like they said, shoot them an email and get in and just be autodidactic, right? Self-educate yourself, and let's get this going.
That's it.
Awesome. All righty, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for your time. Like I said, we'll leave all the links below, guys. So if you want to contact them, buy stuff, all that kind of stuff, check the links out below and get in contact. And I will talk to you all on the next upload. Bye for now. All right.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Remember, in the end, nobody wins unless everybody wins. Come!
Don't want a complication.
I always do it with the lag, the time delay.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially the 144.
because
144 hertz being physically based.
So what was that? 144.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say we all live
The
in
144
boxes.
megahertz ring.
Always happens. I'll do some editing. You talk. I'll be quiet.